Okay, and I'm gonna kinda jump back and forth, just make sure you're getting the stuff on the board and that too. I'll try to come back here every time when I talk. All right, so today we're gonna go over, what you guys seen on drywall yesterday. So the first one, number one, what part of the room is drywall, or is the drywall hung first?
Ceiling?
Ceiling. I would say 99% of the time you hang drywall on the ceiling first. So you put your ceiling up, and this is kind of skipping around on the questions a little bit, but I think this is a good time to talk about this. You hang your ceiling first, then you have your wall still open, the studs. So what's hung next after ceiling?
Wall?
The walls, but what portion of the wall? Bottom part or the top part?
Top part? Bottom part?
Top part.
Top part?
Top part goes next. And the reason for that, there's a few reasons, but you wanna get the seam as tight as you can. Remember, wood's not always straight. So if this was up and down a little bit, you may have a little gap here in spots where it don't quite butt to, because the drywall's perfectly straight. But you wanna get this seam as tight as you can up here, okay? Then you place the bottom sheet last, and you wanna get this seam as tight as possible, okay? Your material has a lot to do with it too, and we kinda went over a little bit of this. We talked about pre-cuts. There was pre-cuts out here on these walls you're building. Does anybody remember what a pre-cut measures?
Is it a 10 inches? 8 by 4?
Not dimensions of the lumber, but the length of it.
8 foot?
It is not 8 foot, but they
10
do have 8 foot.
10 foot?
But you use pre-cutters on a normal building, on a normal house.
10 foot?
Pre-cuts are less than 8 foot. They're 92 and 5/8. Okay, that's pretty important to remember. You need to know that a pre-cut is 92 and 5/8. The reason it's not 8 foot, it's under 8 foot, because when you build a wall, what do you have? You have a bottom plate, which is what? How thick? It doesn't matter if it's 2x4 or 2x6 or 2x8 walls, which isn't normal, but 2x6 and 2x4 are, but how thick is it? It's 2x material, but what does it actually measure? What is it? No. 1.5. Okay, so you got 1.5, and then on the top you have a top plate, then a second top plate, right? A double top plate. Each one of them are 1.5 inches. Okay? If you added those up, it is more than 8 foot. But what they're shooting for is your finished ceiling height to finish right around 8 foot. The reason why it's more than 8 foot is because no matter what you put on the floor, whether it be carpet, hardwood floor, laminate floor, ceramic tile, it doesn't matter, that's gonna build it up some. Yes, all them measure different, but it's still gonna, even after them are down, it's still gonna leave your ceiling height at least 8 foot, or maybe a touch above 8 foot. Does that make sense? So that's the reason they come up with a number of 92 and 5/8 for your pre-cuts. So your finished product after drywall's on the ceiling, remember that would bring it down. So you got 5/8 there, most of the time, sometimes it's 1/2 inch. You have your floor height, whatever you're putting for your flooring. So still between them finished products, it still figures 8 foot or a touch more than 8 foot. So when you hang this bottom sheet, what does drywall measure width-wise? It comes in lengths of 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot, but it's usually 4 foot that way, yes. 4 foot, so if this is more than 8 foot here, but you only got 8 foot of board, that means you're leaving a gap down here at the floor, right? From the floor to the bottom of the drywall. And there's another reason that this material is not bigger to accommodate it being over 8 foot. You want your drywall off the floor, okay? You never want that touching right flat on the floor. It's usually a 1/2 inch up or so. And the reason for that is moisture will suck up it. Did you guys help move that drywall out from behind there?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Back behind this wall? Okay. When we did, there was a water mishap back there behind that wall this year. And it got water all over the floor. And on the drywall that's back there, and you'll see when we use it, it has some stains and stuff, but the stains are way up, about halfway up the sheet. It's not because water sprayed all the way up there. That drywall was sitting directly down on that concrete floor, so it sucked that moisture up that board. And it'll do the same thing in a house, especially a basement or a garage where there's concrete. It would suck moisture right up through it, and it would rot that drywall out. It would cause black mold to get on it, all kinds of things. So that's the reason why you don't bring your drywall right down flat to the floor, because it'll suck moisture up it. Have any of you ever threw a 2x4 down on your garage floor, a cement floor? What does it do when you move it? Have you ever moved it after it's sat there a while? I mean, I'm not talking about an hour or two, I'm talking about days. If you move it, it'll be wet. That board will actually be wet, and there'll be almost like somebody spilled water and it was underneath that board. That's how much moisture it'll draw through that concrete. I don't care if that concrete's been there for 15, 20 years, it'll still do it, okay? Same way with a basement floor, it'll do the same thing. And that's why you are required to put, when 2x material is going directly on concrete, it is supposed to be treated lumber, because it'll also rot that regular wood out. So the whole purpose of leaving this up is to keep it up off the floor, so it don't draw moisture up it. Okay, so number one, the answer is ceiling. I know that was drug out, but we got a lot of information out there. Number two, what is the method of determining the amount of drywall needed?
Square foot?
Square footage, yes. So if you were figuring to drywall a whole house, you would measure each room up, all the walls in all the rooms, and then you would figure the square footage, you would add it together. Then what would you divide by to tell how many sheets you were gonna buy? Well, you would have to buy the sheet that you were using. So if you were using, just throwing a number out there, most ranches, 1,500 square foot ranch, you'll have about 15,000 square foot of drywall in a normal ranch house. And I know that from doing quite a few of them, that that's what it is. Say you're buying 12-foot sheets of drywall to drywall, 12 footers only. So each drywall, you told me drywall comes in 4 foot wide, so it'd be 4 times 12, which is 48. So you would divide this number of whatever you come up with square footage by 48, and that would tell you the number of sheets you would need to purchase. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's the whole purpose of us going back to square footage and working on it again, because you guys are gonna be figuring some drywall, so I wanted you to know how to do it. So you figure it by the square footage. Okay, what is the metal called on the outside corners that you finish it off with?
This is a
Corner bead.
corner bead.
I know you've seen it on the movie, but this is a piece of it right here. You guys will be using this. We'll go into this stuff with greater depth when we move to that section. I'll show you how to install it. It is, how do you fasten this? There is a hammer with a rubber mallet that you can use. Building Trades actually has one. He don't allow them to use it. I don't allow you to use it in here.
Why?
Because I like you to do it by hand, to
You
get it on,
use a hammer,
learn how
really?
to get it on their square, because it really matters if you get it on their square. But how do you fasten it? Do you use nails or screws?
Nails.
Nails, always use nails, okay. Now I've dug out some other corner bead here. There are other types. This particular one, if you had an archway door rounded at the top, or you had an arch window and you were drywalling that instead of putting wood trim there, that's what this is for. And it's plastic. Still you nail it on. This portion goes around, you shape that around the round and nail it as it needs to be. This has to be plastic, because if it was metal, you couldn't bend it like that. It would just be all kinked up. So there's another type. There also is another type out on the market. You usually don't use this unless you have to. Sometimes you run into situations, we talked about when you build triple corners or outside corners up. The whole purpose of building them up is it gives them strength, plus you have a lot of nailer there for your drywall. If you don't have a lot of nailer and you run into situations like that, you'd have to get a corner bead like this. And this is designed, you fasten it just like they showed you they were putting the tape on. You fasten it with mud. There's no nailing to it or screwing to it at all. You apply mud, you place this in the mud and you squeeze the excess out just like you were putting paper tape on. Then when it dries, it's on there pretty good. One situation I guess I've used this in is drywalling, maybe remodeling an older house that has a chimney that goes up through the house and it's brick, but it's not in very good shape and the people wanna cover it up with drywall. So you fasten your drywall to it and then, but you don't have no wood nailer there to fasten to. In the corners, you got masonry behind your drywall. Well, just nailing nails into drywall ain't gonna hold corner bead, it's gotta go into wood. So you can use that type of corner bead for that. Or if you run into a situation where you didn't have real good nailer out here to nail to, you could use this type here. So that's corner bead. Number 4, what is walls and pipes protected by in walls? What's that?
Metal plate?
Those metal plates, and we
plate.
looked at them when we went through the electrical section. We have some in the electrical cabinet there that you tack up that protects that. So if you try to run a screw in it or a nail, you can't see that anymore because you have drywall up there. But if your nail's bending over like you're hitting something metal, that tells you you can't put one there, right? Or a screw
Yeah.
will go in it.
Yeah.
It's just sitting there spinning. Well, you know that that's there. That doesn't mean get a drill out and drill a hole through it with a drill bit.
Yeah.
Because you'd be right into a pipe or a wire that plate was protecting. So it's there for that reason. So metal plates, right? Nail plates, metal plates, whatever you wanna call them. Number 5, what direction do sheets of drywall run when installing it on, walls and ceiling? So it doesn't matter if this is a wall or a ceiling, you have your framework with studs or ceiling joists, whatever it may be. So what direction do you run your drywall?
Long ways?
Perpendicular to your studs, so you would run it in this direction. So the long ways would be run this way. You don't run them straight up and down this way from ceiling to floor. That would be with your, or parallel to your framework. You run it perpendicular, just like we installed OSB. So it's perpendicular, most of the time. Sometimes you do see it ran with the studs, but
Yeah.
most of the time not. When using nails, how should you set the nail?
They run long, you should nail the nails flush with the drywall.
Right under the surface.
Yeah, they should be a little bit below, because you have to have some room to fill that with mud to cover that up. And it doesn't matter if it's a nail or a screw, it's gotta be just below the surface of the drywall. Now, if you are nailing and you bust this paper, or it rips the paper where you hit, or with a screw, if you ran the screw in too deep and it rips on through a little bit, there's absolutely no hole. If you bend it over, there's no holding power there, okay? You can't just let that go. You have to come down where your board's solid and put another nail or screw, okay?
So the paper rips, you have to put it in.
Yes, if it rips the paper, you need to put another one in, because that doesn't have hardly any holding power, and it'll end up popping later on. It might not do it right then, but a year or two down the road, it'll pop out. No, so you gotta put another one there. 7, what is the nail spacing at the ends of drywall? When they're talking about the end, they're talking about down here, running, that would be running with your nailer.
8 inch along the side?
Okay.
8 inch along the side?
6 to 8 inches it should be.
So if I got 8 inches, that's okay?
Yeah, it's okay, but it can be 6, can be
Okay.
closer, but 6 to 8. So that's the same as nailing OSB on, right? What type of nailing pattern is used on the surface of the sheet? when talking about surface, we're talking about out here in the middle.
Every
How
16,
far apart should
16
it
inches?
be?
16 inches?
Should be every foot if you're nailing that way. What I prefer though, on a sheet of drywall, out the middle. So you have a sheet here, and different people do it different ways. What I found best, number one, I don't like to nail out in the middle of the sheet, them should be screws. But double sets of two, about 3 or 4 inches apart. And so it'd be a double set on a ceiling like this. And then you'd have one single nail at your ends of your sheet like this. Those double sets, what that does, you get a lot less nail or screw pops when you do that. Because this screw is kind of relying on this screw, and this screw is kind of relying on that screw. And you just get a lot less pops. Had better luck with that. Some people will go every foot across here and nail. So it'd be one in the center, then one at a foot, and then one here. Some people do that. Either way's okay. Now, I will tell you today, and time slips me, I would say it's been 8 or 10 years ago, they started in Michigan having a drywall inspection. What they'll do is they wanna inspect your drywall, how you fastened it, before you can start mudding. Okay, they wanna see that, because they wanna see that you got a good pattern, otherwise they will not pass it. Some people prefer to work without permits. The bad thing about that is if they came there to, you say you were just remodeling a room, and somebody turned you in and they come there to inspect, and you already had your trim up, this wall's painted, they were all finished, they can make you tear that out.
Even if like you're doing it your own?
Yes,
Really?
yes, they can. All it takes is for a neighbor to get mad at you guys and know you were doing that and to call, they could come in, they could actually red tag your house and make you move out.
That's like a demon.
Yeah, but how come, then you can't build on your own, cause you have to, every time you build something, a
You're
wall, then
supposed
you
to
have to.
pull permits. The whole reason for permits is so they can make sure you're following the codes and you're building stuff safe. Because you could build it unsafe and it may be okay while you live there, but then you sell the house and then all of a sudden you didn't do stuff right. So then the next owner, when they come in, it looked like it was nice, but yet then they have
Yeah.
a bunch of issues later on because you didn't follow the codes. So, and they're not gonna know if you pulled a permit or not. Okay, so there is an inspection for that.
Number 9.
What type of nailing pattern is used on, we already went over that. What is the spacing when using screws to fasten drywall?
One screw
Yeah,
every
it
12,
can
one
be
screw every 12 inches?
Like this, or it can be like this.
Yeah.
Either one is okay. Now, one thing I will say, walls and ceilings sometimes are a little bit different. If you're gluing your walls with drywall glue on your studs, and then you place your drywall into that, on the walls, normal is you got a fastener here and here. One single double set out here in the center is good, 4 inches apart. If you're gluing, you can do that. If you're not gluing, you gotta do this. Okay, but sealing, it doesn't matter even if you're gluing it, you need this and this, or this. Because there's a lot more weight of the drywall pushing down on a ceiling than there is the wall.
So it's bit,
Why I prefer this here
Yeah.
is because your drywall hangs straighter. Because a lot of times these studs are bowed all over the place, studs bow, they're not perfect. You guys seen that when you were crowning them. Your walls will hang straighter doing this. So this is the pattern I usually follow, just one single set.
so if I just put one screw every 12 inches, that's good?
Yes, that would be
Yeah.
good, yeah. So screws, how do you set them? How deep when you're using screws?
Just a little below the drywall.
Just below the surface of the drywall, so you can get some mud
Drywall,
out. So going back to that, of course nailing, you're using a hammer. Fastening drywall screws, couple different methods you can use. This is what you guys will use in here. Drywall screw gun. It is corded. You can buy these cordless also. These are designed right for drywall screws to set the depth. It has a nose on here that's adjustable. So if I adjust it this way, it adjusts that bit up in there so it's less, the depth is less. This way is more. Okay, once you usually get it set for the material you're working with, you don't have to mess with it anymore. If I was to plug this in, hold this trigger, this motor will run, but this does not spin. It has a clutch system. When this bit is pushed in, that's when it runs. So they're designed to run. A lot of guys that are good with a drywall screw gun will just leave them running all the time. That's so you can set a screw on there and you can reach, and then when you put pressure, it zaps the screw in. Exactly. Have you heard them run like that? And I'll show you how to use these more once we get out there working with drywall. I'll do a demonstration. But you get that depth set, you run the screws in. Once it gets to a point where how you have this set, it slips on the screw, it actually slips on the bit, and then that's as far as it goes in. There's another, you can use just a regular cordless screw gun, and you can buy these little bits, and they wear out, but so do those. But this will set it to a good depth also. There's no adjustment to that, so once they get so bad, you just gotta put a new one in.
Yeah.
So there's that type, but we will not use these in here. I just wanted to show you what they are. I want everybody
Okay.
using this when we hang drywall, because I want everybody to get the experience of using one. Okay. So that's setting your drywall screws to depth, just below the surface. When hanging more in one piece of drywall on a row, whether it be a ceiling or a wall, how do you hang that? So if you had a wall here, and say it's 20 foot long, and you're hanging drywall on it, and you're using 12 footers. So you have your studs here, or them could be ceiling joists, it doesn't really matter. You're hanging it, so the first sheet's gonna come to here, right? So you break it so it's on the center of that,
Yeah.
so your next sheet has nailer also. So then you would continue on, so it breaks there, and then here. So your next row on the bottom, how do you line your seams up? So this is a seam and this is a seam. Do you want them to fall, do you start right here and come to this one again? No, you break it up, just like we did OSB, right, on a roof or a floor system.
Yeah.
So you could start at this end and maybe come to this one, and then to here, and then to there, right?
Yeah.
But you gotta break those seams up. If it was a big ceiling like this, and you were running your drywall this direction, once you skip a row, you can go back to that, what the first row was, pattern-wise, and jump back and forth, but you don't want them right on top of each other, breaking at the seams at the same point, okay? Everybody understands that? Matthew, you okay? All right? Just checking. All right, so you're staggering your seams from row to row. 12, what is the name of the tool used for cutting out electrical boxes? Keyhole saw or a drywall saw, that's one of them, yep. Which I had one laying here. Wade, what'd you do with it?
Nothing, it is.
No, that's not a keyhole saw.
Oh, yeah, I don't kill for there.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
All right, so you got keyhole saw or a drywall saw. That's what we'll use on your little walls, okay? But I also have a project where you can use the other tool, and I want everybody to use it, which is this. Does anybody remember what that was? Drywall router, yes. This has a really small bit in it. It's made right for drywall. This is an 1/8 inch bit. There's also another bit that's bigger here.
Yeah.
Okay, they got two different purposes. The smaller bit is designed to cut around stuff like your electrical boxes. This bigger one is designed to cut big cuts, like around window and door openings. Okay, and I kind of explained that this morning by, if you had a wall that had some openings in it, say windows and doors, and they kind of should have showed this on the video. You say you had a door here, so it has this, it has a header, and then you had a window over here, which had a header also, right? And then the rest of your framework. When you drywall this, you don't have to measure and cut all these openings. You can just hang a sheet of board, say it came to there, you had nailer up here to break it on, up above. You just leave this piece sticking in there. Then you can move on and drywall on down, say it broke here, and then on. And then you come back through and you cut these pieces out with that drywall router with a bigger bit. Now, the smaller bit will also cut them just the same, but more than likely you'd get about halfway through your cut and you would break this. These are $1 a piece, and that's coming out of your pocket. So this one, you usually buy one of these and you can do about 20 houses with it. I've never broke one of these. So these will break really fast if you're using them for cutting big openings, so you don't wanna do that. So you guys, I have a project where you use both of these, so that'll be later. Because I do want you to see how that works. Looks really easy. Did you see him cutting it on the video? Looks really easy when he did it. And it is a lot easier, it's to speed the process up, but this not only, if you're not used to running one, you'll make some mistakes and have to do some drywall patching too. That's the nice thing about drywall, you can usually fix just about anything. So drywall router and keyhole saw, right? 13, what is the best way to mark the location of the ceiling joist before you install the drywall? The ceiling goes first, correct? Okay. So if you're starting, say these rails are your nailers, them are your ceiling joists. If you're starting and you're hanging your board this way, if you get that and you're holding it up there, how can you see where to nail against this wall? You're covering them up. Yeah, you take and mark pencil marks down through your wall on your double top plate where those ceiling joists are. So you have your wall here, and you got your double top plate, and say your ceiling joists are running this way. You just take and put your little pencil mark in the middle of those. Then once you have your drywall up there, you have the pencil marks right where it is. Out here, you can still see it. You can still see where to nail, but there you can't, so you need to mark that. Okay. If you switch to the wall, you've got your ceiling done. You got your wall here, it's the same thing. If your joists are here, once you put your board up though, say it breaks here, you can see them down here where to nail at the bottom of your sheet, but you can't see here. So you would go through and you'd put a pencil mark on your ceiling where those wall studs are at the top, so you can see where to nail those up there also. Once you got to the floor, it'd be the same thing. You can, because this is a bottom plate, and part of that's covered up with that drywall. So once you put this sheet up, you wouldn't be able to see where they are down here. You put pencil marks on the floor where those are, and then it makes it easier for them to find. All those are little tricks that help you. Yes, you could be holding that sheet up there and get your tape measure out and measure, find out where the centers are and do it that way, but drywall's heavy, and who wants to sit there and hold it and be wiggling around trying to figure out where that is? You can make good money hanging drywall. If you were to hang drywall for somebody, normal, what you would get paid is 10 cents a square foot. Okay. What I tell you was in a normal ranch, 15,000 square foot is normal for a normal size ranch, about 50,000 square foot of board. So how much money would you make for hanging all that drywall? $1,500. Okay. Most people, a group of two, can hang a house in 2 days. You have to hurry, you gotta move along fast, I mean, you almost gotta be on a run. But you would make how much? $1,500, two guys, takes you 2 days, so how much would each of you make per day?
$750.
You'd make $750 a piece on the job, but what would you make per day if it took you 2 days?
$375.
Okay, $375, that's pretty good money to make in a day, right?
I make about $40 a day.
$40 a day compared to $375, okay, but you have to hurry to be able to make that. I mean, like I said, it's usually 2 10-hour days, and you're almost on a half run to make that kind of money. What I want you guys to realize in here, I don't expect that out of you in here. This is maybe the first time you guys have ever messed with drywall. Speed comes over time of doing something over and over again, okay? production comes with, experience. Don't hurry in here. Take your time. I want you to do nice, neat work, because if you don't do nice, neat work, you're not gonna get any work, okay? So the object in here is not to hurry through your project. It's to take your time, try to do a neat job. I'm not saying I want you to hurry through it and be done with it half a day, hanging it, okay? I want you to make your cuts nice, and that speed comes with experience with any of this stuff, so I'm not expecting it to be done in a quick hurry. That's not what I was getting at with that. Where are we at?
14.
Okay. What is the difference between a butt joint and a tapered joint in drywall?
A butt joint is that like the cracks?
Well, could be.
It could be the cracks.
Okay.
It's like the,
Pointing to the sheet, would be a butt seam?
The butt seams are,
you know, that,
Right here on this end is a butt
yeah,
seam.
right there. and then
Okay, so when you break in the middle of floor joist or a stud, whatever, you have a seam like that, okay? A tapered seam is here, along the long part of your sheet. And what they're called tapered, because they're actually tapered right there. That's tapered in at these edges, but it's not here on your ends, even on the factory ends. I know this has been cut, but they're still not, they're not tapered. This is a lot easier to mud and finish, because you have some room to put your tape, mud, and it still be flush with the drywall. On a butt seam, that's even, this is just even here. So now you gotta cover that with tape and mud, so now all of a sudden you've built this out thicker, okay? So when you're finishing this, you only have to mud about this wide to hide it. This, you have to mud about 2 foot wide to hide it, if you can hide it in 2 foot. Okay, so these are a lot harder to work with, a butt seam, than it is
okay,
a
so just put,
tapered seam.
I said, okay, just put butt joint is on the side, taper joint on top.
Well, it's not always on top, but it's
Tapered
the
down.
tapered edge, where it's
Tapered.
easier to hide, yes.
Yep.
Number 15, what is the best way to mark the location of the wall studs? We already talked about that. You mark it on the ceiling and you mark it on the floor. And I did say pencil. Never, ever mark on drywall with a marker or a pen. It'll bleed through that paint. I don't care if you put 15 coats of paint on that wall, that mark will still bleed through that and show, okay? So you never mark on it with a pen or a marker, always a pencil. Same way with wood, and we've talked about that. That's what we should be using in here when we're framing walls. You always use a pencil, you don't use a pen.
That's good, eh?
Trim work, same thing. On the ceiling and the floor, yes, okay. What is the spacing of the screws on the wall area? We kinda already talked about that.
Yep.
You can go a foot apart, right, out on the surface, or that single, double set if you're gluing, or the double set of 2 if you're not gluing, okay? What causes air to get into the drywall mud, resulting in air bubbles in your
I'm
mud?
not smoothing.
What causes it?
Not smoothing the,
Huh?
using too much?
mixing too much.
What's that? Mixing too much, yes. When you get mud, yes, it's been mixed up, but usually you have to remix it up, because a lot of the liquid goes to the top, just like paint. So you gotta mix it up. But if you over mix that, you're putting a bunch of air in it, so then you get air bubbles in your mud, okay? So over mixing. Why we're talking about that, we're gonna go to this tape, because it's a little bit different when I'm talking about a bubble under your tape, an air bubble under your tape. So the process of this, when you mud this on over a seam, so if I had another piece of drywall here, I'd be mudding this, half on that, right?
Yeah.
So you put mud down first, then you put the tape in it, and then you smear the mud, get all the excess out, right? An air bubble under this is caused from not having any drywall mud in that location, okay? The only way to fix that, an air bubble in your mud, actual mud, like if you mudded over a nail spot, and from overmixing you had an air bubble, it'll make like a hole in it. Mudding over that would fix that, but it will not fix this. So if you get an air bubble underneath this, and you come in the next day to mud over top of it for your second coat, the only way to fix that is to cut that piece of paper tape out and then mud it. If you cut way down where the seam is, you're gonna have to put another piece of tape on it. Cut it out and put another piece of tape on it. Okay, that's the only way to fix that. If you just try mudding over it, that'll just keep bubbling out worse and worse. You'll never fix it by mudding over top of it, okay? So you have to cut it out. Couple different types of tape. I don't know if they showed this in that movie, I can't remember. This is mesh tape. It's supposed to save you a coat of mud. I never use this stuff, I don't like it, and we will not use it in here, but I did want to show you how it works. It's kind of sticky, it comes in a roll just like the other, but it's sticky on the back side, not real sticky like tape, but it's designed so you put it where you need it, and you take this trowel, and it sticks to the wall. Not very good either. But what it saves you that coat of mud underneath it. You don't have to put mud underneath this. I've already used that this morning, so I don't want to stick good. And then you just mud over top of that. It saves you that undercoat mud. Couple things I don't like about it. There's no way you could use that in a corner and make a neat corner. Another thing is it tends to crack out really easy. And then cracking, I don't know if any of you got crack out spots in your house. Pretty much the only way to fix that is to pull that tape down and put new tape up. This stuff cracks out really bad, so I don't like to use it. Also, this tape, when you bust a piece of this off, it has a center line. It's designed to fold so you can mud in your inside corners, like over there. So you gotta put mud on this side of your wall, mud on this side of your wall. You press this tape into it, and then you smear all the excess mud out, okay? This stuff is directional. I'm gonna rip a piece off this that I haven't folded. Just pass that around. You can see it's indented here, and it's sticking out on this side. So you always wanna put your tape on so that that indent is out. You want the part that's sticking like a dent, or it has a hump there towards your wall, okay? If you stick it on there the wrong way, what happens is now all of a sudden that's sticking out, and that's that much more you gotta try to hide, okay? But if you put it on this way,
Yeah.
this will tend to suck into that crack, and then that's easier to fill
Yeah.
something that's in rather than something sticking out. So I'll pass one of them around so you can see that. Don't fold that so they can see the difference. Continuing on with mudding in a corner. There's a few different methods. They do have a corner trowel, and I always show what this is. I hardly ever use one of these. I don't like them because they don't make a nice, neat corner. They never do. But they let you put mud on both sides of your corner at the same time, okay? But it's really hard to feather the edges, and it's really hard to make a nice, neat, square corner. Anybody that muds drywall for a living will use one of these to mud their drywall in the corners. So you have this on your first coat, it's called the taping coat. You have that mudded on, the next day you come back in to do your second coat. You cannot possibly mud this side of your tape and this side of your tape on the same day, because you just keep, every time you try to do this, you're rubbing in this mud. So you have to come in, mud this side first, let that dry to the next day, and then you mud this side of your tape. It doesn't matter if this is running along the ceiling or in the corner this way. You mud one day, one the other, which means this is only getting one coat of mud over it, and this is only getting one coat of mud over it, where your seams are getting 2 coats of mud over it at least. Okay, does that make sense? So you gotta be really picky when you mud this stuff, because you're only mudding one coat, okay, on each, normal. But that's, you'll get a lot neater corner doing that. We'll go over that more when I do my demonstration on mudding, once we get to that point. Where were we at on the list?
Number,
17? 18.
18.
What is recommended size of mud knife for your the tape coat? What size of? Okay.
6
Anybody else got a different answer?
That's
6. That's what I always use. Some guys will use a 4, so it can be from a 4 to a 6. You do not start out mudding with a 12-inch or a 10-inch or an 8-inch knife. Okay, your first coat is done with one of these two.
a 6-inch mud knife.
I don't use one of these unless I'm in a spot where I can't get one of these because it's not big enough. Okay, I usually just use this for all of them, but some guys will use a 4. So 4 to 6 is the correct answer. 19. How many coats of drywall mud are applied from start to finish? Normal is 3. 3 to 4. Sometimes, like you guys, when you work on your project, because you haven't did much mudding, it may take you 4 or 5 to get it nice. But that comes with experience. Normal is 3 to 4 coats. 3 most of the time. Okay, so as you're mudding your seams, you also run your knife with mud on it over your nail or screws out in the center. Should be screws in the center, correct? Why do you gotta do that 3 times?
Because it shrinks.
It does. Drywall mud shrinks. So if you mud over them and you have them filled and you come in the next day, it'll be recessed back in. And then the second time, it'll be recessed back in again. Not as much as the first time, because the first coat was the thickest coat. But it will recess back in because of shrinkage, yes. So it takes 3 times to get them covered up. Number 21, why is a wider putty knife used as each layer goes on? Why do you keep getting wider and wider with your knife? Because you want it as flat as possible, yes, and you keep feathering your edges out. So your first time when you put your tape on, you're only mudding about this wide down through there. The next time you're gonna get it a little wider and taper it out some more. Like I said, on a butt seam, you're gonna feather that out about 2 foot to get that to hide.
In the video, they just did the whole wall.
Skim coating. Good drywall finishers will skim coat. We will not skim coat in here though. Our projects are so small, I wanna see how you go about it, just mud normal, so we will not skim coat your whole board. It never fails, year after year, I'll look at somebody's project and every bit of it is covered with mud. Okay, I do not want it done that way. Okay, I want you to taper your seams out, so the center part of your board on your project should not have mud on it. You should be you'll be mudding your corner bead all the way around, and then your screw or nail holes out in the center, and then that's it, okay? Not skim coating.
Is that skim coated, right?
No,
No?
to taper your joints out. You're tapering them out, feathering them out thinner and thinner on the edges. That's why you use that type of knife. So how did they say to go about this? When you're mudding this, say I'm mudding this seam here, how do I go about running this along here to feather those seams out?
Lift one side of it.
What, which side is which? Where do you wanna put more pressure? On the outside that you're trying to get right down to nothing, right? So you've gotta run along there, and I'm actually flexing that blade. So you're like that along there. You're leaving it looser here, and you're flexing it like that. And these take a feel. Have any of you ever tried mud and drywall at all? It's tough, isn't it, to get it nice? I can mud drywall fairly well, but compared to somebody that does this for a living all the time, no. I always like when Ed Rolson would come in and do a demonstration. He would be turned around talking to you guys and mudding at the same time and doing it perfect. But he does it every day and did it for 40 or 50 years. So there you go. It all comes with experience. It takes some getting used to the feel of your trowel. Every trowel's different. I use this brand right here myself, and I can even using this one compared to mine. I mean, you get used, if you've done enough of it, you get used to a certain trowel, and it makes it feel kind of funny. Part of the trick too is don't stand your knife way up. You want to lay your knife down almost so your hand's rubbing on the wall. You want to lay that flat. You can usually put it on a lot better. What are we on to? 23? Huh? 19?
Yeah, no, we're on.
Oh,
You skipped 22.
I skipped them all.
You skipped 22.
22?
No,
No,
20.
that was the one we
No,
just
I mean
talked
20.
about.
20. You skipped
I
20.
skipped 20?
Yeah.
No, mud shrinks is 20.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't skip that. We're on 23, correct?
Yes.
What size of nail and screw is used for drywall installation? So we have 1/2-inch drywall. What size nail and screw is required for that? 1 3/8. But you can use 1 5/8 is okay. When we bump up to 5/8 drywall, what size nail and screw do you use? 1 5/8. Most people just use 1 5/8 on everything. It's okay to use the longer ones on the thinner drywall, but you cannot use 1 3/8 nails and screws on 5/8 drywall. It doesn't go in the wood enough to have that holding power. Why we're talking about 5/8 drywall and 1/2-inch drywall, where do you use what? Where do you use 1/2-inch drywall at?
Like
Again, like a bedroom.
in the bedroom? Or bathroom, maybe?
Possibly, yes. It depends on your framing. If you're on 16 on center, it doesn't matter if it's a ceiling or if it's the walls. If it's on 16 on center, you can use 1/2-inch drywall. You don't have to, but you can use 1/2-inch drywall. If you're working on something that's on 2-foot centers, whether it's walls or ceiling, you have to use 5/8. Most houses, they're trussed. They have a pre-built truss that they set up there in one piece, and those are usually on 2-foot centers. So most all ceilings are done in 5/8. But if it was something that was conventional frame, hand framed, where you were cutting rafters out, those are on 16 on center, so you could use 1/2-inch drywall if you wanted to. You don't have to, but you can. 5/8 drywall cuts a lot harder. It's heavier. It's harder to work with, sorta. One thing I like about it, it don't bend as much. So when you're hanging it above your head, it don't bow so much in the center. If you only had 2 people lifting it up there, holding it up there, it's a little stiffer. So sometimes it's actually easier to hang, but it is heavier. Talking about these nails, I have a couple different type here. We can pass these around. One's a ring shank and one's a smooth shank. They're both drywall nails. The reason I got those smooth ones is because it's in here. You guys have seen it when we started framing those walls, and you guys had some fresh lumber to work with, and it's a lot easier to pound nails in it, right? Because it has that 15% moisture in it. The lumber we normally use in here is all dried out because it's been in this heat. It's not like it just come from the lumber yard, or it's just a house that's got built and has no heat ran to it yet. It's hard to pound nails and stuff we have here. So those smooth shanks are a little bit easier for you guys to pound in those 2x.
Like some of these other ones bend easy.
Right, they'll bend on you pretty easy.
Yeah, they will.
I would never use those smooth shank if I was drywalling something though, because what do you think's gonna hold in that wood better? That ring shank or that smooth shank? Yeah, it's gonna hold a lot better and you're gonna get less nail pops, so
Yeah.
I would never use those smooth shank if I was actually drywalling something that was for somebody or myself. Number 24, last one. What is the last step after?
Scrape the bucket thing with your mud in it.
Oh yes, every time. I get really mad about this, and it never fails year after year. This year I'm gonna even run it different. Usually I make you sign out tools. You are still gonna do that. Every one of our tools have a number on it. So I'm gonna have a list out there. You're gonna sign them out. You had bucket number 9, you had trowel number 8. If you had to have this trowel also, that has a number right on the end, 19, you're gonna sign them out. At the end of the day, before you leave, you're gonna bring me those, and I am gonna mark off that you had them clean, because it never fails. I'll find them in that, where we wash up there in that sink, down on the floor, dirty, with mud in it, like that, alright? And then nobody did it. No, I cleaned them. I didn't use, somebody else must have grabbed them and used them. So we will sign them out, I will check them every single day, to make sure they're clean. Drives me crazy. These are even left dirty. I don't wanna see any mud on them, there's no reason to leave mud on them. That stuff cleans up too hard later on. With our trays, the plastic ones have metal inserts. These are to get removed. You can see somebody didn't clean that up very good, okay? There's still drywall mud hardened on there. These will get removed and you will clean them and then stick them back in there. Some of our pans only have a spot for one, or they only have one metal runner in it. What do you suppose that metal piece is for?
Like to scrape it off so like you don't put
Yeah,
too much on it?
scrape your trowel on to clean it off. So don't scrape on a side that you don't have a metal thing in. Cause
Yeah.
there's a groove there and you're just gonna drive mud down in it that can't get out. So I want them cleaned in that way. We've got scrub brushes over there. That's what you use to clean it up. You can clean these things up good, but every day that's gonna get done, not get left muddy.
And
So that's all I had with this. I'm trying to think if I want to go over anything else with this. Let me glance this table. I did want to go over the sanding a little bit, not the process, but just different types of tools we have. We do have a lot of these. I got special sheets that go on these. You gotta try to get them on there tight or they'll rip, okay? I do not want anybody sanding drywall with anything but drywall sandpaper. Drywall sandpaper is black, okay? We have a lot of sandpaper out there on that counter. That's not your drywall sandpaper.
Yeah.
This is drywall sandpaper, okay? I don't care if you're using it by hand or if you're using one of these. Use drywall sandpaper. There's also these sponges. We do have some of these. These work pretty good in certain locations. When you're sanding corner bead or big open surfaces, you should be using one of these, not these. These are for small, usually your corners, inside corners and stuff. These work pretty good for there. There also are situations where you need just a little piece of hand sandpaper. This is drywall sandpaper. When these rip, I don't want them thrown away. We'll use them for our hand stuff. So don't throw them in the garbage. Throw them up here so we can use the hand piece. We also, they talked about cutting tools. Did you guys remember this from the movie?
yeah, yeah. Circle
Yeah.
things.
I've never seen where these work very good to cut a circle out.
They do or don't.
They don't.
Yeah.
What happens is kind of the same thing that somebody did here. See how that back paper's still on that? That's what would happen if you tried to use this and bust it through. It would rip part of your back piece of the paper on the back. So what do you think that's gonna do to your drywall? If you rip that paper on the back? It's gonna weaken it, right? It's not gonna be as strong. So you shouldn't really cut circles out with these. These do work good to mark your circles, is like a compass, but they're not very good for busting them out. I guess that's one thing I want to go over too, because I seen this. See how this is busted here? Somebody tried to cut this the wrong way. Sometimes you have to cut notches in drywall like this. If you're doing that, you do not cut both of them with a knife, and that's what somebody tried to do here. When you cut with a knife, you don't cut all the way through the drywall. So the process with cutting, they used one of these, which is a drywall square. Why we're talking about this, I'm really funny about these. I don't like to see these, and I'm probably gonna yell at you if I see it standing like this, because this is gonna get knocked over and it's gonna come sliding down, it's gonna hit here, and it knocks these out of square from doing that, okay? Whenever you're using a drywall square, please set it down on the bottom like this. A lot less chance it's gonna get knocked over and knocked out of square, okay? Method of cutting, of course, you would measure, you use a pencil to put your mark. So I'm just gonna put a mark here, say I need that piece right there, I need this. So you cut it with a utility knife, you do not cut all the way through. I'm left-handed, so I like it on this side of my square, if at all possible. You guys are probably mostly right-handed, so you'd wanna slide it and cut on that side. All you have to do, if you try to cut this and just hold it up here at the top, this, as you cut, is gonna pivot, and you're gonna cut your cut really crooked, okay? So, what I normally do is pinch it here at the top, where it's laying down square. So you pinch it, and down here, hold with your foot up against the drywall. And it doesn't matter, you don't have to do it this way, you could cut it all in the upwards direction. It feels to me like you have better luck, I always cut 6 or so inches down. The rest of the cut I make in the upwards direction. So I just pour that up through there. You do not, like I said, you do not have to cut all the way through the drywall. You're just scoring it. Some of you may have to cut it twice. You have to put some pressure on the knife to get it to cut. So once you cut that, you bump this and you bend and fold that. Take your knife, the paper on the back you have to score. If you keep it folded, you can see that where you got to cut. So your knife will pretty much run right up it, and then you just bend and break it. Okay. That's for if you're cutting it all the way off. Now, even though I cut fairly straight, you get these bumps on this end, okay? A lot of times sometimes it doesn't matter, depending on where you're putting this, but if you're butting this in a corner, that would matter, right? It would hold it out in spots, so you'd have a big gap there. So, does anybody remember what the name of this was?
Looks like a file.
Did they show that on the movie?
Yeah, they showed that in the movie,
Yeah,
yeah.
they
They
did.
showed it in the movie, yeah.
It's a drywall rasp or a sure form, called either one. All it is, it looks like a cheese grater. And you can go down through this and you can shave those bumps right off and it makes it nice and smooth, okay?
Yeah.
Also, if you cut your drywall a little bit big, you can shave this down to size. Maybe, a lot of times when you're remodeling, stuff is not square, so it may be a little shorter in the corner here than it is down there, so you could shave some of this off to get it to fit, okay? That's how that works. Messy, you guys are gonna get messy doing this, dusty. I will allow you to blow yourself off with the air compressor, but that thing better not get ran inside that room. You're to step outside and spray yourself off outside, because if you spray that on the inside in here, that dust is going everywhere, okay? Has any of you ever drywalled in your house while you live there? Where does that drywall dust go? Everywhere. I don't care if you're drywalling down in the basement, in the corner of the basement, your farthest room from that is gonna get drywall dust in it, okay? It gets in the furnace system, it blows all over the place, it's everywhere. It gets tracked everywhere. We are gonna clean up here every day. I got a brand new shop vac out there that picks that dust up really good. There's not gonna get drywall dust left, or we'll spend days cleaning out there, okay? Because the longer we leave it loose out there, it's gonna be all up on the pipes up above, it's gonna be everywhere, okay? On top of tracking all over the building everywhere. So we're gonna clean up good every day, so make sure you're shutting down in time to do that. Back to that cutting, sometimes you have to do a notch like this. Normally, you will cut whatever one's your longest, you'll knife that one. But you can't knife both of these and bust that out of there. It's not gonna work. Okay, so one of them you have to cut with a saw. So you knife, usually because knifing is easier than running this saw back and forth. You knife your longer one. The other one you have to cut with a saw, then you can bend and cut from the backside the other cut. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So that's all I have for now. Like I said, a lot of this stuff there is one more thing I want to talk about. A lot of this stuff, it's a ton of information. I just want to introduce you to a lot of things. But as we do each step, I will go through a demonstration and explain this stuff in greater detail of how to use it and what to do. I did want to go about, some of you carried the drywall mud up. It comes in a pail. You've seen that on TV or on the video, right?
Yeah.
There's also other products out there. This is a powder mix that you mix water in with. This says it is easy sand. It's far from easy. Sanding is the worst part of drywall. And this stuff sands harder than the stuff in the pail. okay? This has a 20 by it. That 20, does anybody know what that 20 stands for?
20, no.
It means it dries in 20 minutes.
That's not very long.
No.
No, it's not very long, no.
I think it's too quick, it's not good quality.
It's actually, gets pretty hard.
Yeah.
And it's almost better mud than what you buy in a pail. But it's harder to work with. You got about 20 minutes of working time,
Yeah.
is what it is. And it'll dry really fast. It works really nice if you're remodeling a bathroom. You can get 2 coats on in a day rather than just 1 coat, you know, so you gotta make so
Yeah.
many trips there to do it. Works good for a lot of things. They have this in different numbers. There's Bond 45, there's 90 minute. So there's different ones. The bad thing with it is you spend a lot of time cleaning your tools up because you mud 1 coat, and as soon as you get done, you gotta go wash this stuff all up and get it perfectly clean before you mix another batch. If you didn't wash this clean, what'll happen is you'll get hard chunks in your mud, and you guys will see that out here also. And then when you rake along here, you got a little hard spot from the mud that was from before, and then you rake it right along your mud where you're trying to do a nice neat job and you're making a nice indented line in your mud. Okay, it's really aggravating. So you gotta, there's a lot more cleanup with this. Now there's another product, it's called Durabond, and it comes in those same numbers, different, it dries at different times. And that stuff you do not sand. It would be like trying to sand concrete. Okay, that hardens really hard and there's no sand into it. So
Yeah.
what you put it on is what it is. Generally you use that not as a finish coat, not even as your second coat. But if you had some big holes, like big gaps, to fill those, because it gets really hard and it's a lot more durable. So you would use that for your first coat before you even put your tape on, that kind of thing. But that's all it would be good for. So we will not probably use any of this, but I just wanted to show you that that product was out there. It's really, I mean, it has a recipe, how much water you gotta put in to a whole bag, and you'd have to calculate that if you weren't using a whole bag, so. Usually you can almost tell by when you're mixing it, the consistency of it. Any questions with any of that? Like I said, we're gonna go over that again. You go ahead and stop that.